Hello and welcome to Kelly's Anesthesia Tips. Today I am giving back because for the first time in a very long time I am actually just right where I need to be and tiny bit slightly ahead of where I usually am. So I want to give back to the Anesthesia Coding and Billing Facebook, specifically Julie Anderson, who was trying to figure out calculations for Medi-Cal, which is the Medicaid carrier for California. I will tell you that this is not something that is so easy that everyone can do it, because there are so many built-in variables that change from state to state and payer to payer that makes this an interesting challenge. So I've built a little spreadsheet here to try to help Julie or anyone else who's having difficulty with this, because I'm going to give you the process, the thoughts behind it, and the links that you're going to need. But I've also turned this into a little bit of an advertisement. I'll tell you why. I say this all the time at meetings. I was in anesthesia for a very long time, about 13 years, before I even knew there were anesthesia meetings outside of Medicare. Medicare doesn't speak anesthesia, not very well. All they can do is quote you what the manual says, but they don't speak the fine language, the idiosyncrasies that are specific only to anesthesia and really no other specialty that I know of. So when I started going to meetings, I was told, and I believed this, and it's probably still true to this day, if not more so, that for every dollar you spend on education, you'll get a return of $20 in knowledge and benefits to your practice. So I didn't go look that up, but if somebody does that and leaves it in the comments, that would be super great to see if that is still true. Why I worry is since I learned about anesthesia meetings, I've never missed 1 year of education ever. I've been to a meeting, I've done a webinar, I've done multiples. And that's what I credit my strong knowledge and background in. It's not just what I know and what I learned, but what I learned from other people at meetings. So I'm going to plug it. I'm going to give you guys a discount code. I'll hop over there, and then I'm going to talk about what is specific to Julie's question on Medi-Cal calculations for payment. So you did miss the discounts. We had an early bird discount. I'm on the planning committee, so I have all the information right here. You missed the early bird. You missed the early bird, but you can still save $100, which would cover your boot camp if you use my discount code of KED24S. I've got a link here. I'll put it in the other one, and then I'm going to pop over to the page here because it's going to be in St. Louis, Missouri. This was done, it's been in Las Vegas for the past 24 years, and we almost lost this meeting, but some of us got together to try to save this and make sure that these anesthesia meetings don't go away. I know how important they are, and I hope that your practices know how important they are as well. So it's our 25th anniversary year. There's a lot of exciting things, new speakers. All of the information is here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because I want to get us into the calculations. But I will put all these links and then just ask you, please, if you have the ability to support these meetings, please do so, or they will go away. And I don't want to see that happen. All right, so let's talk about Medi-Cal. Specifically, I built this spreadsheet. I'm going to go back to it real quick because I'm an auditor. I worked in anesthesia for 18 years, though, before I ever became an auditor, in that I was auditing our own stuff, but still, I've learned every aspect of every job there is to do in the anesthesia office. So I speak a lot of different areas in here, and I know that your systems are set up to do this, but you still have to have an understanding. Now let me back up and say, if you have a good anesthesia system, your system should be set up to calculate what happens with the payments. As an auditor, because I do so many different states, I build spreadsheets. Every state I start, I go and I build these out. I need the Medicare, the Medicaid, the work comp, Blue Cross Blue Shield. United Healthcare and Aetna have some variables, but not a lot. But I build that up before I ever start working on it. So this is from my last one that I worked on for California. That one might have been out of date. I just checked and made sure that I had all of the current ones. But I make notes about what do we do. They have multiple links to policies. I say I know they don't allow medical, at one time they didn't allow medical direction modifiers, but that was removed. So that's changed, and that's why you have to keep up to date on all of this. They use ASA or anesthesia codes, and they don't do minutes, they use units. But I'm going to show you how that works and where it is in their policy, and then we'll do the calculations. So these are the little notes that I make to myself because it's important. Now I may not have remembered to update this one, but let's go check, because they at one time used to pay for qualifying circumstances, Medi-Cal, but they don't any longer. So here, the policy was last updated in 2022. I'll hop and show you in just a moment. They do need the physical status modifiers, and they'll pay for them, but they don't pay for the qualifying circumstances. And here's all of the other information. And I just try to make myself little links and notes so that I can come back to it later if I need to, but it's what I use to help me determine were these paying properly and were they calculated right. But Medi-Cal is extremely difficult for a number of reasons. We'll get to this in a minute. First, let's hop over to this link here, which is a link to the policies. They did have some updating in January, but their anesthesia policy hasn't been updated since December 2022. So let's go look at that first. This has the Medi-Cal rates, but I have the anesthesia. This says September 2020, but you just have to watch and I'll show you. I've done a Control F trick before. We're going to look at the 2022, so you can see that this page was last updated in December 2022. There weren't any for 2023 or 2024 in this particular policy, but the reimbursement or the rate schedules have changed since that time. So I'll take you right back to time for a minute, because that's where we're going to start with this explanation of how they calculate their payments. And we're going to get as close as we can. So here we've got, for billing anesthesia services for Medi-Cal, we've already talked about they want the anesthesia codes. There's your range. We don't usually have to worry about medical necessity with anesthesia, except for a few times, like maybe for pain injections, there has to be a medical reason for things like that. But for cholecystectomies, back surgery, all of that type of services, you're going to have medical necessity. For children, usually, you might see where they have anesthesia where an adult might not normally have it. And a lot of insurances understand that. But let's stick to the calculation here, because I could spend hours on Medi-Cal alone. But we're just going to talk about the calculation of time. So here we have, we're on the very first page for them, how they do their billing in increments of 15 minutes. So I'm not going to read this verbatim, other than to tell you that increments of time less than 5 minutes are not paid, except when the total time is less than 5 minutes, and that's very rare for anesthesia. So we're going to go down to their section, and we're going to use their examples from their policy, and I'm going to show you how this works. So here they say on the second page, for 49 minutes, you're going to enter 3. For 80 minutes, you're going to enter 6. Now, this doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's okay. It's their policy. But I'm going to show you why I don't think it makes a lot of sense on my calculation. So let's hop over to my calculation form, and you will see that I'm going to use their own examples. I used, and if you click in here, I used 80 minutes. Look up to my bar. It says equals 80 divided by 15. That's our time units. On the second one, oops, let me undo that. I did not mean to do that. I don't want to mess up my formulas. I built this before I started. On the second example, I'm going to use 49 minutes because I want you to see this based on how they describe it in their policy and why it doesn't necessarily make sense. But I'm going to show it to you anyway. So I've just proven to you that I'm using their policy of 80 minutes, their policy example of 49 minutes. Why I say it doesn't make sense. They both round to 0.3. Okay, let me do something up here. Let's just move that 0 over a couple of places and see. Ah, okay, so it's not actually 0.3. One of them, the one that we get to round up to 6 units, is 5.33, and the one that they want us to round down to 3 units is 3.27. So it does make sense to them, and this is where you have to make sure that your systems are set up, or you think about this being moved over an additional decimal, because you just saw what happens. It goes from looking like that should be rounded the same to, no, it's not. It's going to be rounded differently because that's how Medi-Cal set it up. So in this example, our anesthesia information is we're going to use a 5 base, remembering that base units do not go on the claim form. Now with Medi-Cal, they may follow the ASA, which is in your relative value guide. I may or may not be able to hold this up properly. Let's see. Yep, there it is. If not, I've done a YouTube on these as well. So base values, if they're using CMS values, that's going to be on a different location. It's the CMS anesthesiologist website. Again, I've shared that one as well. So here we have our 5 base units, our 80 minutes, which they want us to round up to 6 units. I went fast, so I'm going to go show you that again. For 80 minutes, enter 6 in the services, units, days, or units box, which for us is 24G on a paper claim, or the electronic equivalent of 24G, but we've got our 80 minutes, and I just showed you that one. Now we've got 5 base, we have 6 because we're going to round this up to the next unit when we calculate what we're expecting. So here I have another box built for what was our payment and what did we expect and why we expected it. So now we're going to have to go over to the rate schedule, which I also link. So I want to show you this one. On the rate schedule here, you will see this is Medi-Cal providers. They are updated on the 15th of the month and published on the 16th. You scroll right on down to our lovely anesthesiology section. We have our own. And you will see that their conversion factor for hospital outpatient department, they give you the provider types here, is $14.01. But don't stop there. Keep going, because if you are in a free community and county clinic, they're going to pay you 70 cents more for your anesthesia services. Or in another clinic, the same thing, 70 cents more. But wait, we don't get to stop there. For a nurse anesthetist who has a different provider type of 18, there's a reduction. They only pay about 75% of what they will pay the physician. So if you have a modifier, and I'll show you these in the policy as well, that identifies this as a physician, you're looking for 1401. If it's a CRNA, you're looking for 1102. Let's go back. I don't want to lose you when it does get confusing. So first I want to cover this part, then we'll talk about where more variables are and why this is so important to understand. Okay, so here we're still on that first example. We've already talked about the base. We've already talked about the time that we're rounding up to 5 and 6 equals 11 units. 5 plus 6. We have our calculated rate for the CRNA only because it was 1102, and that's our QZ modifier. So we're now going to build this in here to say, and I could do this two different ways. I can hand key in the 1102 times 11 units, or I can say equals the number of units times the calculated rate, and it should give us this amount. What happens if Medicaid pays you incorrectly? If their payment was, I'm going to make this up, $500 because somebody did something wrong, I need to fix this to say, yeah, that did it wrong. Let me do this. I'll have to work on that again because I'll have to say equals this minus that and bring it down and try not to see if they're built on something else, then it might just mess me up. So here I'm going to say 1102 and here I'm going to say 1471 so it doesn't screw up the formulas. Now let's try that again. $500. They overpaid us by a lot of money. So we have to be able to understand what we're expecting and what they paid. Now, if they paid us like they were supposed to, 121.22, this difference would be good, the same. No issues, no problems. So I'll go on the second example a little bit quicker, but first I'm going to make sure that I build up my formulas the right way this time so I don't get messed up. Okay, I did not. So now we're going to go do the same thing a little bit quicker, and you can always rewind and rewatch, but I want to do this again. Now we have a 7 base unit. Let's say it was a cholecystectomy. And then we've got our time units. We're going back to the policy again, not to the rates. Well, we do need the rates. We've got 1401 for the physician. But remember, we had 49 minutes. Boy, that was a fast chole, but that's okay. I've seen some pretty quick procedures here lately that have been kind of blowing my mind. All right, so here we have the example where they want us to round down to 3 units. Okay, we can do that. We have, let's fix this, 7 plus 3. So that's 10 units. Our 10 units then goes the same way that I just did. I can either say equals 10 units times 1471. Oops, which if you're sharp-eyed, you will notice that 70 cents extra is from that other location here. See that? Let's go change this to 1401. Just so you can see that everything does work the way that it's supposed to. Let's say 1401. Or there. We're expecting 1401, but they paid us 147.10. It's going to tell us you've got an overpayment, and that's when it's on you to go check, did they really overpay me, or did I not know that they pay 71 cents for this location or this type of service? Those are the things that you have to know and understand. Now, I said it gets a little bit more complicated, and it does. Hopefully you now have an understanding of this. You don't report these on the claim form, but you still need to know what they are. The time units are rounded to the pulled out. It's not the nearest tenth for Medi-Cal. It looks to be the nearest hundredth. But again, systems set this up, but you have to understand that as well. Now we get to a section in their policy, and I'm going to run you over here to look at this again, because if you see something in quotes, that means I didn't change anything about it, except make it red to point it out, bigger so we can read it, and all of that good stuff. because sometimes I am off change. Sometimes I am off small amounts, and I will attribute that to a rounding of sorts, because some of them will tell you our rates are correct to within plus or minus 1 cent. But when I say there's more, look at this. If you have a child who is 17 years or younger, they're going to pay 9% higher than the rate they pay for the adult patient. So then you have to take that $14.71 times 9%, and they're going to pay you about $1.32 more for a child than they would for an adult. Hopefully that makes sense. But wait, there's more. So just when you think you've got all of this very well understood, you have to look at something else. So I actually opened 2 pages to this so I could make it bigger. On this one with the conversion factors, there's information up here and there's information down here. But I want to go show you what I made it bigger, and I'm going to pop it back up again, because even knowing about that 9% for the children, there's another something you have to know. The reimbursement rates published on this website do not reflect the following payment augmentations or changes or reductions. So they're either increasing or reducing something more for your patients. Because effective for dates on or after March 1st of 2009, unless you're exempted, you're subject to a 1 to 5% reduction based on your provider type. So here's another variable between 1 to 5% for Medi-Cal that's going to throw off your calculations as well. When I said this wasn't going to be easy, but I could explain it, that's what I mean. So you do have a method of trying to get to the amount that they're paying, but boy, is it convoluted. So I am going to give you all of my resources. I'm even going to post the discount code that I started with into this meeting, because honestly, you can read a book, you can learn from a book, you can watch YouTube, but unless you have opportunities to interact with not just the speakers at a meeting, but other attendees, especially you guys from Missouri, we're in your neighborhood. So, you're having the ability to interact with people who bill the same pay as you bill. And you might be able to say, I'm having an issue with this, or I'm having an issue with that. And that, to me, is the added value to these wonderful anesthesia meetings that I've not missed a year of since 1996. So that's going on an awful long time. All right, those of you who are not new to the channel know that I like to end with be kind to one another and generous with your knowledge. Me telling you what I know does not make me any less smart. I thank you. I ask if you subscribe, you'll get those reminders about the new content. Julie, I think I went and sent you a message because I don't know if you subscribe or not, but hopefully this is a great value to you. Take what you've learned here and apply this process to anything else. Look for the policy, look for the payments, try to calculate and figure out what it is they're doing, and can you make sense of it? And that's the whole trick. All right, thank you guys. Until next time. This was a long one, but it required a lot of explaining.